to introduce our next keynote speaker is the chairwoman of 2020 Berkeley China Summit Board of Directors, Anne Su. Anne is an alumnus of both the College of Engineering and the Haas School of Business at UC Berkeley. She organized many alumni activities while living in China for 10 years, helped launch BCS 5 years ago, and is currently on the board of Cal Alumni Association Chinese chapter. For 2020 Berkeley China Summit, Anne put in tremendous time and effort to guide and support the organizing committee. Anne, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Coco. Everyone all put in a lot of work, including yourself. Now, Dawn Tilbury and I met as graduate students in Berkeley's Electrical Engineering and Computer Science department in the late 1980s. We became fast friends and roommates and backpacked around China for 9 weeks in the summer of '92, sitting on some very hard seats in long train rides across China. Since then, Dawn has visited many more places around the world, taking advantage of conferences and sabbaticals as a professor of both mechanical and electrical engineering at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. She has even taught at Shanghai Jiao Tong University. Dawn is an avid reader and literally does homework on each place she visits, giving her wide knowledge and understanding about many people and cultures around the world. With Dawn's intelligence, fun-loving and easygoing personality, and her ability to lead or be a team player as needed, it is no wonder that she has not only excelled at her field of engineering research, but also at administration, both at University of Michigan as Associate Dean of Research for UM's College of Engineering, and now at the National Science Foundation as head of its engineering directorate. She exemplifies the type of women leaders that Berkeley has educated in the past 150 years. Dawn's mission at the NSF is to support engineering research and education critical to the nation's future and to foster innovation to benefit society. She provides significant funding for basic research in engineering at academic institutions like UC Berkeley. Basic research involves projects that have no immediate application in industry or seemingly useless. Yet it is this type of research that furthers humanity's understanding of science and the universe. And when basic research results are turned into products and brought to market, we know them as technology innovation. At a time of decreasing international cooperation, especially between the US and China, I am personally grateful that a level-headed and extremely competent citizen of the world is in charge at an important post in our government. Please help me welcome Dr. Dawn Tilbury to speak to us on advancing basic research through international collaborations. Dawn?
Oh, thank you very much, Anne, for that wonderful introduction. And thank you for the invitation to be here today. As Anne mentioned, I'm the Assistant Director for Engineering at the National Science Foundation, and I'm happy to participate in the Berkeley China Summit. Let me see if I can get my PowerPoint presentation up here, because I have a few slides that I think will help me convey what I have to show today. If I can get that up. So as Anne mentioned, we met as graduate students at UC Berkeley in 1989, as I recall, right before the last big earthquake. Is it time for the next one? I hope not. So, and as she mentioned, while I was a graduate student, I spent a summer traveling around China with her. I graduated from Berkeley in '94 with my PhD and then started as a professor at the University of Michigan. In 2004, I went to Shanghai Jiao Tong University for the University of Michigan Joint Institute and spent several weeks there teaching a course in mechanical engineering. My most recent trip to China was in 2017 for the IEEE conference in automation science and engineering that took place in Xi'an. So I'll tell you a little bit today about basic research at National Science Foundation and international collaborations, and then I'll leave some time at the end for questions. So first, let me tell you a little bit about the National Science Foundation, since not all of you might be familiar with it. We fund basic research and education in all areas of science and engineering, from astronomy, unlocking the secrets of the universe, to zoology, studying how animals behave, and everything in between A and Z. We also fund the US Antarctic program with several year-round bases on the continent, and that was one of the places I did have an opportunity to visit, which was quite amazing, but that's another story. So our budget for fiscal year 19 was about $8 billion. We're just finishing up fiscal year 20. The fiscal year ends on September 30th. And you can see there's a lot of things that go into that budget. I'd like to point you to the number on the far left. 94% of the money that we get at NSF from taxpayers, US taxpayers, goes out the door to fund basic research and education and outreach activities in all 50 states and territories. We don't do research at NSF. We enable others to do that research and education. When people send in those proposals, you see more than 40,000 were received, we evaluate them using two criteria: intellectual merit, or how will this project generate new knowledge, and broader impacts. How will the results of the research impact society? This merit review process that we follow with these two criteria and expert panel reviews is considered the gold standard worldwide. You can also see that more than 300,000 people are funded, at least in part, by the National Science Foundation. Also, from the more than 40,000 proposals we receive, only about 18,000 are able to be funded. Now, many of those that we leave on the cutting room floor are meritorious and would benefit from funding, but there's just not enough money in the pot that we get from Congress to fund everything that would be fundable or valuable to society. So it's a very difficult decision to choose. So what happens with all that research? I'll give you a few examples of some the investments that we've made and the outcomes. One thing that you might think of is 3D printing. Now, NSF started funding the very basics of 3D printing or additive manufacturing in the 1980s. And since then, it's grown into a multi-billion-dollar industry. Some of the work that we funded also has enabled autonomous cars, barcodes, and the foundation for the internet. You might have heard about gravitational waves. Well, NSF persisted in funding the instrument, the LIGO, or Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory, for nearly 40 years before it detected its first gravitational wave. The telecommunications giant Qualcomm started with an NSF small business grant, and the internet giant Google grew out of an NSF project on digital libraries at Stanford. And just last year, an NSF-funded Event Horizon telescope took a picture of a black hole. Now, the Event Horizon telescope is a great example of international collaboration. By connecting 8 ground-based telescopes located all across the planet and 13 partner institutions around the world, the international team of more than 200 scientists from 20 different countries worked together to analyze the data that those telescopes took and piece together the first image of a black hole. That image that you see on this slide was seen by an estimated 1 billion people worldwide. Now, of course, most international partnerships are on a much smaller scale. So why does NSF care about international partnerships? Well, let's look at a map of the world and see where R&D or research and development investments are being made. North America is just over a quarter, which is less than Asia. And if you compare in the purple here to see how those investments have grown over time, you can see that Asia has been growing faster than other regions. Now, much of that growth is coming from China, and on my next slide, I'll have a little more detail. But with this large investment worldwide, it makes sense for countries to partner with each other on basic research. the fundamental knowledge that comes from exploring new directions and new phenomena that can lead to new breakthroughs, new industries, and help make life better for people all around the world. There will always be competition in the marketplace, but cooperation in the pre-competitive basic research space can benefit everyone. By publishing the findings of this basic research in the open literature, everyone can benefit from the findings of this basic research, and knowledge can grow further and faster than if everyone had to figure everything out all by themselves. So why is R&D spending important? Well, it's a driver of innovation. In this chart, you can see that in 2015, the US spent the most on R&D of any single country, accounting for about 26%, or almost $500 billion, of the estimated $2 trillion global total. Now, China was a decisive second at 21%. One thing to note that's not shown in this chart is that China spends about 5% of its total R&D funds on basic research and 85% on development, whereas the US spends a larger fraction, about 17%, on basic research and a smaller fraction on development. On the other hand, what is shown in this plot is that China has rapidly increased their R&D spending over time, an average of 18% per year since 2000, compared to 4% in the US. Indications show that we expect China to overtake the US spending in about 2018 or 19. The data for that is still being gathered, but that's the expectation. So what does international cooperation look like from the NSF perspective, since that's really what I can tell you most about? And there's really a lot of different ways for people to collaborate. The primary form of international collaboration is ad hoc, researcher to researcher, where two parties work together, maybe talk about new ideas at a conference, or exchange students, maybe share data, while they're working to solve a similar problem. There are also formal agreements between agencies, and I'll talk about one between the US and China a little bit later. The collaboration can be simple, with an individual faculty member writing a proposal to NSF and her international counterpart finding her own funding, and the two work together informally. Typically, with any international collaboration, the US funds the US side of the partnership, and the international partner is funded by their own government or other funding agency. But when the two faculty have to write two different proposals, it's not easy for both to be funded at the same time. We sometimes call that double jeopardy, since the same proposal needs to be reviewed by two different review processes, two different panels, and maybe the timing is off. So at NSF, we try to spend time to work with other agencies and make these types of formal agreements so that the team can write one proposal that gets reviewed by one panel, and if it's successful, then the two sides each get their own funding from their own government. This is a great situation for the researchers because they don't have to go through this double jeopardy, and it saves them a lot of time and effort. Of course, it takes a lot of time and effort for us at NSF to create those types of partnerships, but we think it's beneficial for the researchers. And so we do have a lot of these types of international agreements with funding agencies in Germany, Israel, UK, China, and many others. A memorandum of understanding is another way for people to work together, either for a joint solicitation, such as that two-dimensional funding I talked about, or for large-scale facilities like the Event Horizon Telescope, or logistics in Antarctica, where multiple countries contribute flights and other support to researchers on the continent. Now at NSF, we're always looking for new ways to collaborate, to work together to advance the basic scientific research that can have multiple benefits to society. So what countries does NSF researchers collaborate with? Well, the answer is just about every country has somebody at NSF doing some sort of project in partnership with someone in the other country. This chart shows the top 20 partners, and you can see that China is number 5. behind Germany, the UK, France, and Canada, but ahead of Italy, Spain, and Australia. Now, China and the US have a long history of engagement in science. In fact, President Jimmy Carter and Chinese President Vice Premier Deng Xiaoping signed the US-China Science and Technology Agreement just a few weeks after diplomatic relations were established in 1979. Research connections between the US and China are very strong. China is a very frequent partner with the US in research collaborations. In fact, in 2018, 25% of internationally co-authored publications with one author at a US university also had a co-author with a Chinese affiliation. So at NSF, the Engineering Directorate has a US-China partnership through the NSF and National Natural Science Foundation of China, or NSFC, this joint solicitation on environmental sustainability challenges. This joint solicitation has been running since 2014. Since the US and China have the two largest economies on Earth and also have important engineering, technology, business, and trade relationships with each other, both nations face significant environmental sustainability challenges. For example, in the food, energy, and water nexus, urban sustainability, global change, and manufacturing. Fundamental research is needed to provide the foundational knowledge to address these types of societal challenges. Since this joint solicitation was started in 2014, there have been 4 different topics explored: combustion related to sustainable energy, sustainable manufacturing, urban water sustainability, and the most recent one, which is currently under review, is innovations at the nexus of food, energy, and water systems. This initiative aims to significantly advance our understanding of the food, energy, and water system through quantitative and computational modeling and enable research that will lead to innovative human and technological solutions to critical systems problems. Through this annual opportunity, NSF and NSFC have jointly funded a total of 27 awards from 2014 to 2019. The 2020 competition is currently underway, and the awards will be made early in the next fiscal year. One example is at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, where a group is collaborating with a crop research group at Nanjing Agricultural University to study the US-China crop supply chain. Together, they're creating an integrated systems modeling framework that will enable the connection of local stakeholders to global challenges and opportunities. So several years ago, NSF had 3 international offices, and each office had one NSF employee and a small staff who tried to cover a huge breadth of research areas along with a large geographic area. We have since closed those international offices and pivoted towards more focused engagement in specific geographic regions using this multiplier program. Here we send teams of NSF employees on fact-finding missions to different countries or regions to evaluate collaboration opportunities in different countries that can lead to joint solicitations, memoranda of understanding, or other types of partnerships or collaborations. In one of the first multipliers expeditions, we sent a team to Germany to explore activities and opportunities in synthetic biology. Synthetic biology is an emerging field that focuses on the construction of new biological systems. It has the potential to enhance healthcare, agriculture, industry, and environmental biotechnology products. As a side note, a lot of the early advances in synthetic biology were led by an NSF-funded engineering research called SynBerk that was headquartered at UC Berkeley. The Multipliers team that went to Germany participated in a workshop at the Max Planck Research Network, which is the largest national initiative in Europe in synthetic biology. So in summary, international collaborations are important for advancing basic research, and NSF is committed to facilitating our awardees to create and sustain these important research collaborations. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
So thank you, Dr. Tilbury, for helping us understand the vital role that NSF play in global international collaboration and also in nurturing fundamental research. So I see some questions from the audience, and we have time for 1 or 2 questions. So the first question is, how does NSF stay independent and unbiased in today's crazy political environment?
So thank you for the question. NSF is an independent federal agency. So we are part of the executive branch. We report up through the president and the Office of Science and Technology Policy, but we are very independent. We issue our solicitations, and the decisions that we make are really coming from the community. We invite reviewers from the community, from academia, from industry to help evaluate the proposals. And then we make the decisions on what we think are the best research directions for the country as a whole. So we have in Congress very strong bipartisan support on the focus of science is important for the future of the country. So we have good support in Congress and from the presidential administration on the importance of basic research. I can't hear you.
Okay.
Sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Can you hear me? Okay, great. So the next question is, does NSF prioritize projects which advance interest? Or I think what they mean, this audience mean is, how does NSF prioritize and screen the projects and decide which project to take on?
So
do you take a more global view, or you have a preference for projects that provide more benefits to just human beings or mankind in general?
So we evaluate all projects that I mentioned before on 2 aspects. The first is the intellectual merit. What's the potential for the project to advance the frontiers of knowledge? And the second is the broader impact, which is what's the potential for the project to have an impact on society? And that impact can be many dimensions. It can be in education, it can be broadening participation, it can be developing new technologies. So many different ways for the research to have a potential impact on society. And so we treat both of those criteria very importantly. And we also look at a portfolio approach, that we don't want all the projects to be trying to solve the same problem or in the same way. We want to fund a diversity of approaches with a diversity of researchers and people located all across the country as well.
Thank you so much. So I have to wrap up the conversation since we're running out of time. The good news is those who want to continue the conversation with Dr. Tilbury can join a separate Zoom room. Please follow the handbook instructions and to sign up. So thank you, Dr. Tilbury.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. I enjoyed it.
Thank you.